Democratic State Representative Mihaela Plesa of Dallas, thank you so much, and welcome back to Eye on Politics.
Thank you so much for having me on.
You bet. So the special session is coming up, and Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick have already said that the special session will address the horrific flooding that we've seen in Central Texas. What would you like to see done during the session?
Well, first and foremost, I just want to give my condolences to everybody that has lost so much in Central Texas, and just say to them that we stand with them, and let everybody know that there is a bipartisan effort in the House of Representatives to raise money and get as much help out there to everybody that has lost so much. Our thoughts are with us, with them, and they're with us.
And so right now there's been a lot of talk. The Lieutenant Governor has said he would like to see outdoor warning sirens placed along the Guadalupe River by next summer. What do you make of that? He said the state could pay for it. I know cost has been an issue according to all the reporting that we've seen for that local community.
Yeah, I'm in absolute support of this. I think that everybody has agreed that this was a lack of a warning, that we should have done a better job of making sure that people knew that this flood was coming and how dangerous it could have been, even though we know that this area of Texas is prone to this type of activity. We've seen this in the early 2000s. Everybody has been talking about the incident in the late 1980s. So we've known for a long time that there needed to be more access to warning sirens and communications. But it goes further than that. Out of the 26 positions currently held at NWS, 6 of those positions are unfilled. Critical positions that were needed to make sure that emergency personnel locally had access to information, but also that campers and residents had access to this information. One of them is titled the Warning Communications Meteorologist, right? This is a position that coordinates in times like what we're seeing. So I would also like to see critical positions being filled, not only in Austin and San Antonio, but in San Angelo, and also the fact that we haven't been launching weather balloons. We had been launching weather balloons regularly the day of this event. Only one weather balloon went up to manage a 200-mile radius. So obviously we need to invest in critical infrastructure and early warning signs, alert systems, but also making sure that critical positions are filled, and that we are doing everything we can with the technology that we currently have to get as much data as possible.
I know that there certainly has been a lot of questions about whether the funding cuts to the National Weather Service played a role in getting out these alerts, but even the National Weather Service Union said that was not the case. They had more people on that night in the Braunfels office, which covers that region. But you raised the point about, once those weather alerts go out, who's actually receiving them? And I know that, a lot of people, we're all guilty of it, they turn off the alerts and things like that. And that's why I guess now, there's a lot of talk about putting sirens in that area. But as far as going forward, and not just, does the state need to not just look at this area, but statewide to get an examination of how many of these same situations are there?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think that we need to look at these 20, 30, 100-year flood plans, right? I think that we need to look at how we're zoning areas, why we're allowing people to put up RVs so close to the riverbanks when we know that that area is prone to flooding. So I'm really looking forward to conversations with my colleagues, especially the ones that represent this area, as to what they would like to see done. I know that I represent far north Dallas, and not that long ago we had one of the most expensive natural disasters when a tornado came through North Texas. We did not see the loss of life that we did then, even though we saw over $1 billion of damage, because we had early warning detections, because we had critical positions filled, and we didn't have empty desks when the sirens and the alarms started going off. So I'm definitely looking forward to that conversation. But I will let your viewers know that the critical investments that were needed in this area would have cost the state, I think the bill that was before us, House Bill 13,
Yep.
I think that only had a fiscal note of about $500,000 to, you know, the special session is going to cost Texas taxpayers $1.5 million to go back and deal with this issue. So I think that for all my fiscal conservative friends out there, we need to look at what's before us and make the investments when we can, instead of waiting for what this storm is going to cost us. Is over, you know, some predictions are almost $10 billion.
The House Bill 13, which you mentioned, did pass the House. It didn't make it through the Senate. And I know one of the things that it would have done was create a Texas Interoperability Council to basically come up with a statewide system where emergency communications could be coordinated, along with training and along with creating a grant program for local communities to buy emergency equipment. Given this, do you think that something like this will pass?
I hope so. I was a co-author on House Bill 13 because I know that that bill was an exception by the wildfires that happened in the Panhandle. Yeah. I know what this type of emergency systems did for North Texas, and so I'm a huge supporter and hope that yes, we will look at this stuff. And you know, this bill, even if it would have passed, I know that it wouldn't have been implemented yet, but I hope that we can expedite something like this now that we're going to be spending 30 days back in Austin.
Seems like that's going to happen.
I'm looking forward to voting on it.
Do you want there to be hearings? I know that in 2021, during the session, was that horrible winter storm that impacted the entire state. It led to 254 deaths, but there were hearings during the legislative session where everybody came in and there was a breakdown on exactly what happened. Do you think that that's necessary here?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think that we need to hear from local officials. I think that we need to hear from the people on the ground. I think that it's going to be very important testimony. So many people are down in Central Texas right now volunteering, helping recover victims, and so it's going to be critical to hear what their experiences were.
Is there anything else on this topic that you would like to see take place during the special session as it relates to the state's response, et cetera?
Well, I think that we are going to have an opportunity to look at so many different things around this horrible tragedy, but also how we can prevent these things from happening. That's the role of government. The role of government is to anticipate what the dangers are and to protect Texans. And so that's my number one goal, is to make sure that we're creating preventative policies.
So another part of the session that everybody had been talking about until this horrific flooding was Governor Abbott's ban on Governor Abbott's veto on the THC ban. And obviously talk about that has subsided. What would you like to see happen? Because this created friction between Republicans. But most Republicans voted for the ban. Many Democrats voted against it.
Yeah, well, I think that the issue with what we saw in the bill as currently written is that it would have landed the state of Texas in the court system, right? And so it wouldn't have actually done what the point of the bill was, is to protect kids and to make sure that we're keeping harmful things out of people's hands, right? I think that when we go back into the special session, we shouldn't do anything that inhibits the expansion of the Teacup program, which I was proud to be a joint author on that bill, making sure that people who need access to medical cannabis have that. And Texas has now become the 40th state to expand its medical cannabis program, and I'm very proud of that. We need to make sure that veterans have access to the medicines they need, and people who are chronically ill have that freedom. And so what I would like to see is what we've seen in some of our neighboring states, right? Oklahoma has a medical cannabis program that also has something like regulations of THC and low dose hemps and Delta 8s and Delta 9s. Louisiana has a program as well, and so does New Mexico. So I think that we can just look at our neighbor states to see what they're doing, what works for them, and how they're protecting their consumers.
And I know the lieutenant governor has said that he basically says regulation basically would be allowing recreational use of marijuana. Do you agree with that?
No, I think that that's silly, and I think that the lieutenant governor knows better than that. I think that Texans deserve freedom. I think that they know what's best for themselves. We should be allowing Texans to make choices as to how they deal with their chronic pain. And I believe that they know best, right? I'm not trying to regulate their use of medical cannabis. What we're trying to do is create a system where the edibles that people are taking and that they're safe and that they're not easy to get into by children, right? And I think that that's more of what we're trying to do when we get back into the special session. Texas is losing patients every day to our neighbors who are going to Oklahoma and New Mexico to get medical cannabis. These are medical refugees, and Texas should be helping Texans get the care that they need.
Now, they did expand it this session, as you said, but you're saying it's just not far enough.
What I'm saying is that we shouldn't do anything that inhibits that passage, right? We should be allowing people in North Texas to have access to these products, right? Right now, the state of Texas only has one licensing cannabis distributor. So if you live in House District 70 in my district in Plano, it's very hard for you as a teacup member to get access to these products.
Why is that?
Because they have to drive all the way down to Austin to get them.
So that's the only place that you can do that?
Yes, currently, and hopefully with the implementation of this new House bill that expands teacup, we will see more of that. So that's my only concern, is that we don't go in and kind of do away with some of the progress that we've already done this past session.
The other thing that's out there, that's been out there for several weeks, is whether lawmakers such as yourself are going to be asked to redraw the state's congressional districts this year before the 2026 midterm elections. What have you heard about this, and what are Democrats in general saying about this?
Well, I think I've heard what everybody else has heard, that President Donald Trump has called Governor Abbott and asked him to redo the maps because he's concerned that Republicans might lose in this next midterm election. And so my concern is that, first of all, we're redistricting in the middle of the decade, which is unprecedented. But when you look at redistricting should be about representation, not about manipulating maps to control power. And so Democrats are going to do what Democrats always going to do. They're going to ask for fair maps. They're going to ask for equal representation. And we're going to hope that, that's heard, and that we're not doing something that's going to silence communities of color and silence voters in the state of Texas.
And my last question to you is just about the overall session as a whole. Were there any victories for Democrats, do you think?
Oh, absolutely. I think that there were a tremendous amount of victories for Democrats. We passed one of the largest school funding bills in Texas history. Texas teachers will see a raise, especially if they're rural teachers. We passed record numbers of infrastructure development, whether it's water infrastructure or workforce infrastructure. We passed an exemption to this draconian abortion ban that women have been living under for a long time. So I definitely think that Democrats had wins this session that they can be proud of, protecting their local communities and protecting local control.
State Representative Mihaela Plesa of Dallas, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jack.
We appreciate it.